Hello and welcome to episode 13 of The Political Pulse. Today we are honoured to invite special guest Basil Zempilas MLA, a former journalist, a duly elected Perth City Lord Mayor, the member for Churchlands and the leader of the Western Australian opposition. My name is Gus and beside me as co-host is Michael Harvey. I want to extend my thanks to outgoing hosts Noah Cooper and Dylan Sarkar-Tyson for their outstanding work in providing valuable political knowledge and insights throughout 2025. Now let's delve into it.
So thank you for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
So I guess we'll just get into the early life. So who is Basil Zempilas and how did growing up in Western Australia shape the leader and person you are today?
Yeah, well, thank you firstly for the opportunity. That's a really good question, and it's not something that you often sort of think about. But I suppose to be as brief and succinct as I can, I think fundamentally I'm a very proud Australian and West Australian, but of Greek heritage, and I've never shied away from that, and I think that really certainly helped shape me. But fiercely parochial. I've loved everything about Perth. I went to school here, went to university here. I started at Channel 7 here when I was 22, then made my way into local government. I was the Lord Mayor for nearly 5 years and now the leader of the opposition. And I say all of those things only to demonstrate that I've really been Perth and Western Australia my whole life. And I am fiercely proud of being a West Aussie. And the more my journey goes on, the more I realise that our isolation, it sets us apart. Sometimes people think it's a disadvantage, but I actually think it's been a huge advantage. And I think because we're not close to the rest of Australia, we've got our own thing going on. We're proud of our achievements. We're proud of who we are and where we come from. And we're very proud to think our own way. And so that's who I am. I'm a West Aussie first and foremost. I love everything about WA, and I see huge ambition and huge possibility for Western Australia, and that motivates me all the time and every day.
And I guess also, what are three things that you would want West Australians to know that you're all about?
Yeah, well, firstly, I am all about WA, but in particular, we're a very prosperous state. We're very lucky, and many of the people in your community have felt that prosperity. Mums and dads and families have done well. They've worked hard and they've built a really successful life for themselves. And we're rich in natural resources. We all know that. But sometimes West Australians in other parts of our community, in other parts of Perth and around Western Australia, don't feel that prosperity. And I think what I would like to see for WA is for everybody to be able to share in that success, for everybody to be able to have a life that is better than it has been or better than it could be. The other thing I'm really interested in is this generation of West Australians being able to, the way I have and my parents, and hopefully your parents and certainly their parents, but I would like your generation to be able to buy a home, be able to find one, be able to buy it, be able to pay it off, and be able to know that that is something that they can aim for. And right now I worry that your generation aren't certain where they're going to be able to live when they move out of home, whether they're going to be able to afford the rent, and that great aspiration, which is affording and owning your own home, I want that always to be within reach for West Australians, and we need to find ways for that to be possible. So that's two things. Owning your own home has to be a possibility, has to be within reach. Making sure that everybody feels the prosperity of Western Australia, I think that's very important. And I am fiercely proud of the great multicultural community that we have. I think that sets us apart in a really positive way. And I want everybody in Western Australia, wherever they're from, whether their families go back 5 or 6 generations or whether they've arrived on an aeroplane from another country 2 days ago, I want them to know that in WA they are supported, they will get help if they need it, and they will get opportunity to grow and succeed. Like my parents coming from somewhere else had the opportunities, and now me and my family are the beneficiaries of that. And I'd like that always to be part of our DNA.
So Basil, you're elected on a 2-term basis as the Perth City Lord Mayor, and it was your first instance as being part of a governing body.
Yeah.
And the people of Perth obviously resonated with you and your aspirations. When you look back on your time as the 18th Lord Mayor, was there a moment or experience that best represents you as a leader? And conversely, was there a moment where that really tested you, where you thought that was harder than I expected?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and thank you for acknowledging. I was really pleased to be elected in the first instance, and then especially proud to be re-elected with a significant margin. And just on that, I think the first election is always great for anybody, but the second one is really the test. The first one you probably get elected on hope or possibility or on potential. The second one, you get judged on your track record and whether you've actually delivered. And so I think it's always really rewarding for anyone in any sphere of any election to be given a second term because they're judged on their record. So I was really proud of that in itself. I was very keen. The city had some damage to its reputation. The previous Lord Mayor and Council had been dismissed. Commissioners were running the city, and it was a return to elected members. And I was really keen that the city got its mojo back, if you like, that the city felt proud and people felt proud of their capital city. And so to be able to build a program of events that meant people came back into the city in a big way, that really filled me with pride. Our activation of Elizabeth Quay, never before had Elizabeth Quay been activated. Now, every summer, there are events right across the summer months where people flock down to Elizabeth Quay, whether it's a drone show, fireworks, New Year's Eve, floating stage, or any of the other activities. And it's become a real focal point for the Perth community. I'm really proud about that. I'm also proud that we reclaimed the name City of Light. City of Light was given to... I'm going to tell you this story now, boys, because I reckon this will be half interesting for you. It's long, but it's important.
Yeah.
So back in 1962, John Glenn became the first astronaut to orbit the Earth. He went in the Friendship 7 spacecraft. And he went up, and it became clear that he was going to travel over the top of Perth one night. It was February 20, 1962. And so the Lord Mayor of the day thought, what a great idea if we get everybody to turn their lights on. And when he comes over the top, he'll look down and he'll see the lights of Perth. And it was a way of saying to John Glenn, the first man ever to orbit the Earth solo, that he was not alone on his journey. Well, sure enough, the people of Perth, your grandparents and maybe even great-grandparents, they did it. They all turned their porch lights on. They turned their car lights on. Some people went out the back and shone a bright torch on a sheet. And John Glenn, at the designated time, came over the top of Perth, off the darkness of the Indian Ocean with the darkness of the Australian desert in the distance. And there were these bright lights shining out on the coast of Western Australia. And he says to Mission Control back in Houston, he says, I can see the most magnificent lights. And what is that down there? And Mission Control, the recording of this is on YouTube. You can go back and listen. You might even drop it in.
Yeah.
You might drop the audio in.
Might have to.
Well, it might be significant.
Roger. I do have a lights in sight on the ground. Over. Just off to your right there. That's affirmative. Just to my right, I can see a big pattern of lights, apparently right on the coast. I can see the outline of a town and a very bright light just to the south of it. On down. Rockingham, you're saying there. Roger. The lights show up very well, and thank everybody for turning them on, will you? Very well, John. Very fine.
And then you hear them say, that's Perth, Western Australia. And John Glenn says, please thank the people of Perth for turning their lights on. And with that, a few days later, that event became famous right around the world, so much so that the Lord Mayor of Perth was invited to New York to be part of John Glenn's Welcome Home presentation after he touched back down in the Pacific Ocean and was taken back to mainland. And Perth became known as the City of Light. It was a great name, City of Light. And what I love about it is Perth has always, all the way back to then, we've always had a way of being very welcoming. We've always stood out. We've always been able to send a message to the rest of the world that here we are, we're down here, we welcome you, and we're a place that can really send a message. And we reclaim the name City of Light, such a great name. And so Perth, City of Light is a tagline that we reclaimed during my time that I'm really proud of, because I think in lots and lots of ways it represents that story And the modern incarnation of it represents what Perth is and what we stand for. And if you ever go to the Council House lawn, just in front of the Council House in the city of Perth, opposite St George's Terrace, there's a giant
astronaut. I've
giant
seen it there.
astronaut, and it is the modern embodiment of the John Glenn City of Light story. And it's a nod to where we came from, how we got our identity, and the future path that we're going to forge. And I like that, all tying it all together.
Now, across Western Australia, the fishing ban has been a significant headline, or demersal fishing ban rather, has been a significant headline across the media now for a couple of months. And it's raising concerns about sustainability, jobs, and the future of Western Australian coastal communities.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, how do you balance protecting the environment for the long term while ensuring that local communities aren't left behind in the short term?
Yeah, it's a good question, Gus. And I think first and foremost, it's important to say that my side of politics, the WA Liberals, together with our alliance partners, the WA Nationals, we believe in the sustainability of our fishing supply, of our fish supply. It's important that we have fish for future generations. But our view was this ban that was handed down with only 3 weeks' notice was very sudden. There was not enough consultation and not enough account given to the lives and livelihoods that were going to be severely impacted. Kalbarri all the way around to Augusta is a huge area. And so a couple of things. One, did the ban have to be as drastic as that? Did it have to be all of that area? Could you have perhaps said, all right, you can't fish there, but you can fish here. You can't fish there, but you can fish here. And for example, the abalone season, we manage that by saying it's 6 weeks, Saturday morning, an hour at a time or 2 hours at a time, and then you can't catch abalone outside of that period. So you can have turn it on and turn it off methods. And so we wondered about that. But deep down, really the issue that we have, is it fair? Is it fair? Sustainability of our fish supply, really important. But commercial fishers, the people that go out and fish for a living, they cannot do that ever again for demersal fish. As they have said to me, do you think we'd want to wipe out fish stocks when that's our living? We care about it, and they care enough to be able to carefully manage it within rules. But these rules, they can't manage it within. These rules, they've just been wiped out. And we don't think it's fair to fishing families. We don't think it's fair to those business owners. And we don't think it's fair to those coastal communities who rely so heavily on the fishing industry. So for us, it's a matter of fairness. And could it have been managed in a better way? Might we have been able to say a partial ban, a short-term ban, and then return to fishing? As it stands, commercial fishers are wiped out forever, and recreational fishers cannot fish off a boat for demersal fish for the next 2 years. And we believe it could have been a milder version of that.
And now looking at the cost of living, which is another significant concern within our community.
There's the train, by the way. I knew the train was going to come in.
Yeah.
You can't get more authentic studio scotch than the train coming past. So for the record, there it was.
It's very topical for students and the wider community watching this podcast. And when you sit down with small businesses and families and young people, what are they telling you that most concerns you?
Life's tough. Life's tough. That's what they tell us. That life is really hard, that they're working their backsides off. Lots of families, lots of parents, lots of grandparents are working really hard, but they're not seeing the progress. They're not seeing it get easier to live. And it sort of comes back to what I said right at the start. In a state as prosperous as Western Australia, people should feel the benefit of those incredible natural resources that we have, that mean we have huge mining royalties come into the government coffers. But so many people are finding it tough. We've had an interest rate rise already this year. The experts tell us there's likely another 3 within the next 12 months. We've seen inflation go up. That puts more pressure on the Reserve Bank to increase interest rates. And then we've seen almost every daily household fee and charge go up, including insurance, electricity, the cost of your water. And so the most common theme is, life is tough. And that's difficult. And people in small business are finding it hard to keep their momentum going when their customers have got less money to spend because their mortgage is going up and all of those other daily fees and charges seem to be rising all the time. Then they've got to manage their staff, and they've got a lot of paperwork that goes with it. And they get hit with other taxes. Sometimes they're hit with payroll tax if they've got a workforce that's big enough. And life is tough. We hear often from the government, we live in the most prosperous state and we've got the strongest economy. But what I hear from the people right around Western Australia is life is tough and it doesn't seem to be getting easier. And so that's the common message.
And yeah, I guess it is kind of just a major issue at the moment. I think for especially young people, it's probably the most strongest concern on our minds at the moment. And it's good to sit down and have conversations like this.
So do you think, is it cost of living that's the big, like broad cost of living, or, and I know you're doing the interview, but so the number one issue in WA, is housing. At the last election, I think it was cost of living. The number one issue, though, is housing. I get that very consistently.
Because housing demand is outweighing housing supply, and I think it's continuing to progressively increase.
Yes, and so it's driving the prices up. I speak to a lot of people a little bit older than you. I went to O-Day at UWA the other day, and I was asking people, hey, where are you guys living? They were kids typically, I say kids respectfully, kids between 18 and 26, 27. I didn't find one person who was not living at home with mum and dad. Now, they're lucky that they can do that. And I said, why are you living at home with mum and dad? They said, because it's just too expensive to move out.
That's something you wouldn't see many years ago.
No, going back a bit.
Yeah.
And so the reason I say that is is housing an issue for you guys at the moment, or is it just more general cost of living because you haven't yet turned your mind to where am I going to live if I want to move out of home?
I think housing's an aspiration for everyone in the future, but it's progressively getting further away from us and out of reach.
Yeah, I think for housing, like even at our age, people are still really concerned whether they're going to be able to get a house in the future and like all that kind of like raise a family. Let's say, I think there's still like a big concern even currently, even like in younger years especially. It's that how are Western Australians at the current rate going to be able to get houses in the future and live in a home?
And exactly what you've said is what I hear consistently. Cost of living fits into that, and obviously if you've got a mortgage or if you've got rents to pay, then cost of living becomes part of that housing conundrum because you've got less money to spend on other things, or all of your money is going to your rent or to your mortgage. But it is the number one issue. And you touched on the word aspiration, Gus. As I said right at the start, West Australians have always been able to aim towards home ownership if that's what they wanted to be able to do. And I'm not sure about your generation, whether your class, if you like, the people all around your age, all around the state, are going to be able to aspire towards home ownership. And that will be a great shame because it is a great West Australian thing for people to be able to aim towards. And I think we build better communities, probably better families. We probably build a better spirit when people can work towards owning their own home and then being proud of their home and paying off that home and then perhaps moving to a better home. And if we lose that, I think we lose a really significant driver and motivator for a generation of West Australians.
Yeah, that's quite right.
Yeah, well, I guess, I've got kind of a bit of a two-parter.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to swap back to kind of your career and how things have gone. I mean, you've worked in a diverse range of industries, from journalism to Lord Mayor to now Leader of the Opposition. Have those kind of earlier roles helped kind of shape the leader that you are today?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. First thing I'd say is that although I didn't become a broadcaster with a view to sort of, a stepping stone to local government and now state politics, but it's become pretty clear to me that it's a really good set of skills that you're learning and it's very transferable. I think in its essence, doing what I'm doing now and certainly as Lord Mayor, it's about being in the people business. You've got to communicate with people, you've got to relate to people, you've got to listen to people, and you've got to understand people and be able to talk to them and fight for them when required. And in a way, that's what a broadcasting career teaches you. It really is about communicating with people and working with people. So it's been excellent preparation in that sense. I was never an out-and-out leader in my broadcast career, but I was always part of teams and I always understood team structure. And I always understood that the best teams operated at their best when there was a strong and designated leader, when there was a clear line of command and clear expectations, and everybody in the team knew what their role was and also knew there would be consequences if you stepped out of those team rules. And so one of the great benefits for me, I think, was being involved in some really successful teams and also observing really successful teams. I was involved in sport, as you both know, so intimate sort of knowledge and ability to look at, say, the best football teams, the best Olympic teams, the best tennis teams, the best swimming outfits. And they all had very similar traits. There was a clear message at the top. Everybody knew what they needed to do. They all worked very, very hard and they followed the rules. And if they stepped outside, they were brought back into line. And so I think those things, being exposed to that sort of stuff's been a really good preparation from what I'm doing. And also, I was very fortunate to, for many years, anchor telethon. I think I saw the very best of Western Australia for those who really needed it. And that's always given me a reminder that putting back into the community, helping those who need help, and others who have had great fortune, being able to help those who haven't been as fortunate is a really important fundamental of what we have over here in WA. And I think we do that better than anywhere else in the world. And that's something that we should all be very proud of.
And I mean, with this as well, I guess now you're the leader of the opposition. How is that how are you, I guess, influencing the state from an opposition side compared to like being the Lord Mayor where you're on the front line?
That's a good question, because you don't get to, I am not in, I'm not in an administrative role. As the Lord Mayor, you are making decisions and you can influence genuine direction. As the opposition leader, you don't have that ability. I'm not in a governance or governing role. And so therefore, it's influencing in other ways. But I'll give you an example. Last year, we, the opposition, spent a good deal of time calling out failures in the health system. We didn't think that the health system in WA was up to scratch. There were 3 consecutive months of ambulance ramping. At the same time, the Premier kept saying our health system is world class. We kept pushing back and saying the people in hospitals, the doctors, the nurses, the patients, they're crying out for help. And our combined pressure, together with all of those people who were reaching out and telling their stories, ultimately, 3/4 of the way through the year, it forced a change in approach from the state government. And the Premier stopped saying it's a world-class system, and then a little bit further on down the track decided that they were going to spend $1.5 billion making the health system better. Now, we couldn't make that decision in opposition, but we certainly were able to influence it. We were definitely part of that decision-making process from the state government. And so you can have an impact. And I think I've come to learn that the role of opposition leader and the role of those in opposition is to be a voice for those people in our community who don't have a voice or those whose voices are not being listened to. And I think that's really important. And I think deep down in any political system, the better the opposition is, the better the government is. The more the government can be held accountable, the better the outcomes will be for whatever state or jurisdiction that is. And so we don't have we're not the ones calling the shots, but we can call the shots out. Yeah. And that can make a difference. And I'm more and more aware of the role of opposition, and opposition done well, I think, is really important.
I think the opposition, you have kind of like a mandate, I guess, to push against the government.
And
I think
hold them accountable for actions and ensure they're doing the right thing.
There's a bit of that, and you're probably going to, but it's not just about that. Certainly part of it is calling the government out or holding them to account or pointing out failures. But in time, and we're almost 12 months into a 4-year term of opposition or government for the government, in time it becomes not just about pointing out failures, but also selling our own vision and what our policies will be to take to the next election that will make you guys will be allowed to vote then.
Yes, we will, yeah.
So what will the policies be that might interest you guys in voting for us? And so it has to be not just about calling the government out, but also our vision, our policies. And you'll certainly see some stuff in the housing space, because I know from this conversation that's something that's on your minds. We also know that health is a huge issue, and we know that cost of living is a huge issue. So a lot of our efforts will be centred around those areas.
We, I guess, looking at it in a way, a different sort of perspective. It's a bit like a business trying to sell a product to people.
Yeah.
And they have to buy into that.
Yeah, well, you guys might identify with this. My daughter is 14, turning 15. She goes to one of the girls' schools down the road, and she came back during the last federal election one day from school, and she held out her phone, and she showed me a TikTok that Anthony Albanese had done. And she showed me and pressed play, and it was Anthony Albanese saying to young people that he was going to pay their HECS debt if he was elected at the last election. And my daughter, who her dad is the leader of the state opposition and the leader of the state Liberal Party, said, "Dad, I'd probably vote for this." Now, what she was saying to me was, and I really appreciated it, was, "Dad, that's connected with me, and that has connected with younger people." And it was a really good lesson for me very early on in my time that as we get closer to the election, I think what it becomes is almost a bit of a contract between the major parties and what they are offering to the people to try and suggest to them, hey, vote for us and this is what we're going to do for you. It almost becomes like an offer.
Yeah.
And so what is our offer to the people of Western Australia going to be? What is our offer going to be that makes you as young people say, you know what, I think I'll vote for him and for them and for that party. And so that's incumbent on us. But we don't just come up with the offer, which really is another word for policy. We don't just come up with the offer by sitting around the table one day and dreaming it up. We do it by talking to people, getting out in the community, listening, understanding what's important and what's needed. And so I find that hugely exciting because I know just from, 10 or so minutes talking to you guys that it confirms what we think, that housing is super important. So what are we going to be able to offer you guys in 2029 in the lead up to that election that makes you sit back in your chair and go, or like my daughter did when you see me pop up on your TikTok, what's going to make you say to your friends when I'm delivering some message or some offer to you, you know what, I think I'd vote for that. And so that is our challenge. And then, of course, the subsequent challenge is not for it just to be some gimmicky, flashy advertising spin, but a genuine offer, genuine policy that we can then deliver, back up, and it can make your lives better. That's the challenge for us.
Well, we're going to look forward now into the future. And although we're off the back of the March 2025 state election, the 2029 state election's glooming closer and closer day by day. If you were to become Premier in 2029, what would Western Australia feel like under your leadership?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I like that. I'd like us to get that sense of look. I think West Australians are very proud of who they are, but I do think at the moment there's a bit of division in our community. I think there are people doing really well and people who are finding life really tough. I'd like to see that balanced out a little bit more, and I'd like to see people not feel as though they're working their backsides off but not making any progress or not being able to get ahead. So that's one thing. I'd like people, wherever they come from in Western Australia, wherever they're from originally, to feel as though this is a place where if they work hard, adopt our values, be part of the culture of the place, but still maintain their connections to wherever they've come from previously and bringing those great multicultural traits, but fundamentally working hard, being part of our community, that they can get ahead, that they can progress and that they can see a better life for them and their families. And I would like us to be in a place where people have hope. And I think that's the key word. I just feel as though getting around WA over the last 12 months as opposition leader, I just think there's a great number of people who've lost hope that life is okay, that they're not starving, they do have a roof over their head, even though it's very expensive, but they've lost hope about making real progress in their lives and perhaps building wealth. Building a better life that means more comfortable as they move forward. And I'd like us always to have that hope. I'd like to see that hope returned.
Well, that's very insightful, and we're going to wrap things up now, but we're going to finish off with a bit of a finish the sentence segment.
Oh, I like this. Yeah, great.
I don't know if you've seen
Everyone
the
loves
recent.
Is it one word only, or can it be?
Oh yeah, whatever. The first thought that comes to mind.
Okay, all right.
All right. So let's get started.
Yeah, we'll get straight into it, I guess. I mean, the most common lie told in politics is...
The most common lie told in politics is no new taxes.
All right, this one might be a bit difficult. The Premier, Roger Cook, is...
A good bloke, trying his best, and I think his heart's in the right place. And he's a Scotch boy.
I know, we need to get him on. He's
Controversial.
He's very difficult to get on the
Wait
podcast.
till he finds out that a Hale boy has come on the
his
Scotch
studio.
College podcast
Yeah.
before him.
Yeah.
I might ask. Do you want me to ask him in
Yeah, that
Parliament
would
for
be
you?
great.
In fact, I can. We've got question time,
Yeah.
right? So what if I use one of my questions in question time, and there's a sort of pattern to them. You have to look at the speaker and you go, Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Premier. And then I say, Premier, on behalf of the students at Scotch College, is there any chance you will commit to making an appearance on the Scotch College podcast?
That would be awesome.
And then you get a supplementary question. So depending on what his answer is, you get to go back with a second question. So he might say, well, yes, of course, I'd like to fit it in, but I'm very busy. And then my follow-up can be, Premier, you'll be letting your old school down if you don't commit with a fixed date before the end of this year.
Yes, that would be...
We'll give it a try. What do you reckon?
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
great.
I don't think my colleagues will be that happy with me burning a question on the Scotch College
no.
podcast, but nonetheless, this is important work, boys.
Thank you.
I mean, next question, I guess. West Australia is...
The best place in the world to live.
I mean, that's good to hear.
And finally, the cost of living in Western Australia is...
Getting higher and higher, and under a Liberal government, we will make sure that it gets lower and lower.
Well, thank you very much, Basil, for joining us this morning and
Good.
taking time out of your day.
Good on you, boys. Been really
Enjoy.
good. I counted 3 trains. You know it's the Scotch College podcast if you can hear the trains off in the distance. Well done, boys.
Thank you
Excellent.
very much.
And really enjoyable. Thank you for having me.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming on.